Roman Catholic Church and Orthodox Church are in schism. Not heresy. Not apostasy. Those are technical terms that have their own definition.
The patriarchal encyclical of 100 years doesn't matter a damn anymore. The Balamon Agreement to most people doesn't matter a damn anymore. I don't think most people in the Orthodox Church worldwide care anything about these statements.
And I remember asking him at one point, when I was a Nazarene, I never met a person that claimed to be a Nazarene that wasn't. There was no fake Nazarene clergy running around. So why do you have that in the Orthodox Church?
The 70s until today, we can see that these bilateral dialogues, first of all, were the unanimous. Was the result of a unanimous Pan-Orthodox decision. It's not only some Orthodox that make a dialogue with other Christians. It's not only one particular local or national church that conducts a dialogue, but this is conducted on a Pan-Orthodox level. And this Pan-Orthodox decision, going back to the Pan-Orthodox conferences of the 1960s, has served to reinforce the unity between the Orthodox. When we are confronted to dialogue with the other Christians, we must be on the same wave. We must come together to have some kind of unity and consensus between ourselves. So the bilateral dialogues, has reinforced the Orthodox communion, as one can say.
Distinguished leaders of the Jewish community and other faith communities, beloved children, shalom.
I said, hold up, wait a minute, something ain't right.
Father Bless, I recently found out Father Seraphim Rose's works have been censored. The parts where he spoke highly of the GOC old counters. Thank you, Seraphim Webster. Thank you. Yeah, I know all about that. And I'll tell you something, it's unfortunate. I think it's an unfortunate move in the sense that exactly what you're talking about, it just gives more credence to those who in the old calendars to say that the editors of the books are what's the word, deceitful, I guess. I did actually talk to the fathers at St. Herman's about this, and their reasoning, was there was a reason behind what they're doing. It wasn't they didn't feel what they did was wrong, and they justified it. I guess I could share some of the things I remember, but don't quote me, and it's not the entire defense of this, but I want to defend them because I think they're very sincere. But they said that, look, Father Seraphim's understanding of the old calendar said those days is one thing. It's debatable how much he understood about all the different groups. But today, things are so different that, we knew Father Seraphim. We knew how he felt about these general things. We don't think that today he would have the exact same stance that he had in the 70s, which is likely, right? People change, things change. You're going to have a different stance depending on developments. But and they don't want to support the idea that Father Seraphim would undiscerningly across the board encourage people today to go to the old calendars groups. So they felt it was better for all those who had not been infected or affected by these ideas to just not have to deal with that. And so they removed it. I think it's a mistake. I told them I think it was a mistake. Leave it in and put a footnote is what I would have done. But I don't think it's the major issue that people make it out to be, because I know that, most people know, first of all, and there's plenty of writings out there of his views of the old calendars. So the fact that they took it out has not impacted that. You can go find that out. Like, it's not like, oh, now nobody will know about it. No, there's all kinds of writings about it. We've talked about it. We've written about it at Orthodox Ethos. People disagree, but it's not a mystery. So the removal is not that big of an impact. Again, I think that they were motivated by pastoral concerns today. I think they should have just made a footnote, but it's pretty limited, not that extensive. I think it's just in Orthodox Religion of the Future, maybe another publication. I don't remember, certainly there. And so it's an opportunity for the Greek old calendars to call them out and say, you guys are deceitful.
From the view of the international law, how we might be hurt or not.
Hurt, you mean that something will be done contrary to it?
No, that they might use against us.
Okay. Who is they?
The MP.
Okay, the Moscow Patriarchy?
Yes.
So the concern is that the Moscow Patriarchy may use some aspect of international law in a way that ROCOR does not agree with?
To harm us.
Now, when you say harm, harm in what way?
We will not go along or something.
Who won't go along? ROCOR?
Yes. If we will not go along.
You mean go along with the merger?
Yes. Понимаете? Если мы поссоримся вдруг, объясним.
Can't take the Russian part now. I'll just let you know. Fingers aren't moving.
Well, what's the basis of that concern?
Might happen, everything.
What might happen?
And we will not go along. We will start to quarrel or something, and so how we
Oh, I see. In case.
oh,
I see. Okay.
Понял,
Okay. You have to forgive me, Your Eminence. Eventually I get there. Sometimes
Okay.
it takes me a little longer.
Thanks, God.
But I think I'm here now.
Okay.
So the concern is that to the extent there's a dispute between ROCOR and the Moscow Patriarchy, you would like to know how that dispute would be resolved.
Not a result, but that they were not able to just kill us.
Okay. When you say, you mean take you over?
Yes.
So in the context of the relationship, you have some concern or desire that the relationship be controlled to some extent by ROCOR.
Yes.
Has anything been said or done in the past to give you this concern about the Moscow Patriarchy?
No. So far we had no.
Well, is there something in the past of the Moscow Patriarchy that gives you some concern? No. Nothing comes to mind? What did you mean when you said, kill us?
No, что они нас проглотят, объяснимо. I mean that they will not swallow us.
In a sense, take you over. Yes?
Yes.
Is it ROCOR's intent that the Moscow Patriarchy take ROCOR over?
The Moscow Patriarch, what?
Is it ROCOR's intent or desire to have the Moscow Patriarchy take it over?
No, that they desire this?
Yes.
No.
Why we're in the situation we are today 100 years later. He introduced division, but how? Because he innovated and unilaterally changed the calendar to bring it into agreement with the West, the so-called revised Julian calendar, which the motivations are clearly ecumenistic and not out of pastoral care for the church. And the reason why we can say that with surety is because there was not the Orthodox ecclesiology was not followed there again. If the church had done what it should have done, which was such a massive change, which would bring division between local churches, should have happened in a council of all the churches, and it should be a joint decision of all the local Orthodox churches. That was not the case. Constantinople did it, and then slowly over decades, other churches that now are on the new calendar changed. So there was a reaction to this innovation and unilateral change in Greece, because a couple years later, the Church of Greece followed suit. And then there were people, faithful people in Greece, who rejected this innovation and said this has been a departure from Orthodox tradition. And insofar as they protested it, as did many around the world and on Mount Athos, and have ever since on Mount Athos said that this was an innovation and a mistake, they were very much in the Orthodox tradition. The problem arises later, and I can't get into all the details of the history, but eventually 3 bishops departed from the Church of Greece over this issue. Eventually, they even declared that the Church of Greece was graceless because of this matter. And there was a lot of animosity. There was persecution of these Christians who refused to change the calendar. And without the calendar, we're talking about the calendar of the saints, and not the movable calendar of Pascha, which is the same for all the Orthodox. So
Uh-oh, Father, your audio is cutting out a little bit there. Could you repeat the last thing you said, please?
Calendars in the church. There's the movable. And so the change came about with regard to the Menaion, which is the saints and the feast throughout the year, not the Paschalian. Okay, so the Paschal calendar is the same for all the Orthodox to this day. In any case, over time, I want to focus on the reaction of the old calendar bishops, the bishops who refused to change the calendar in the Church of Greece, and their reaction eventually evolved into an ecclesiological stance which is not patristic. And this is the beginning of the problems, really, with the resistance to the calendar change, is that they declared graceless the mysteries of the Church of Greece at one point, and then methodologically, over a number of decades, their stance became one of creating a parallel jurisdiction. So they would set up bishops alongside the other Orthodox bishops in the Church of Greece. And the question is this a patristic resistance? I mean, there's so much we could discuss. I'm just touching on the high points here, but is this the patristic resistance? Did the fathers do that? How did they respond to the eruption of innovation or heresy in the history of the church? What was the patristic stance? We don't see that kind of stance of two things: of before a council that deals with it, the whole church deals with it. We don't see proclamations and declarations and denunciations of other Orthodox who are Orthodox in faith but are in communion with those who are not or are falling away, declaring all of that together, whether they be innovators and heretics or whether they be Orthodox, all of that together, declaring before a council graceless, unorthodox, heretical. So they took that stance eventually because they believed in this idea that there are communicating vessels. So let's say there's somebody in Paris who teaches heresy, and my bishop is in Thessaloniki. Well, we're in communion through the local churches, and therefore that communicating vessel relationship we have with the heretic preacher in another country or local state church, and my bishop, who is not teaching heresy but not breaking communion with that bishop, well, that means that I'm also a heretic, or I'm also deluded, or I'm also lacking orthodoxy. And then the idea is, well, we have to cut from all of those together, regardless of whether they teach it themselves or not. We have to cease communion and declare them unorthodox. That's the stance of most true, genuine Orthodox Christians today. That's their ecclesiology. And so on two counts, methodologically, that doesn't seem to be the patristic stance. The fathers worked, and there are many examples in church history where Saint Meletios of Antioch, for instance, was essentially elected by Arians. Or St. Ambrose of Milan. Also, there were Arians and Orthodox who elected him, even after the First Ecumenical Council. We have anomalies like that throughout church history. So there's just not that kind of legalistic, rejection across the board, undiscerning, indiscriminate rejection of everyone, even if they're struggling against ecumenism. For instance, I've talked about ecumenism for 20, 30 years. It's been one of the things I've studied. And even though I'm vocal against the ecclesiological heresy of ecumenism, I'm still considered to be a non-priest, a non-Orthodox. There's no sense of any discernment between and no participation in the struggle. One of the biggest criticisms I have of these brothers and sisters who followed the old calendar among the old calendar jurisdictions is you've made yourself irrelevant. You will not be persecuted for your faith by these heretically minded because you're irrelevant. Patriarch Bartholomew could care less what they're saying because they have essentially departed from his communion and from his sphere of influence. And so whatever they say, he just writes off. And there's no sense of being co-responsible. As we say, as all Orthodox, we bear one of those burdens. We're co-responsible, all of us, for the state of the church. And so when I depart from communion, declare graceless, declare heretical, all without discrimination, I'm no longer bearing their burden. I'm no longer struggling along with them. And I become irrelevant to the struggle. I don't think the saints ever were irrelevant to the struggle. Why did they come and visit St. Maximus and basically implore him to come under and into communion again with the emperor and with the patriarchs? Because he played a huge role in the whole empire because of his influence. He was not irrelevant. He never made himself irrelevant. And he struggled. One of the key things among the saints is they struggled to get a council together of bishops to condemn the heresy. And this is what the Orthodox for the last 700 years have been trying to do, is struggle to see a council come about. Only in council can the church definitively answer the provocation of heresy or of innovation. Whatever I say or you say or all of us say together, it doesn't mean anything until the council meets and says this is the Orthodox faith. Every time a heresy was overcome, it was in council. It wasn't just 10 or 15 people saying, we're Orthodox now, you're all heretics. That's not the Orthodox patristic response. So I could go on a whole hour with you just talking about the ins and outs of the patristic response to heresy, but that's the main problem. They're not unorthodox. They teach orthodoxy, these groups, but their response is not patristic, and it doesn't ultimately add anything to the overcoming of the heretical doctrines or heretical ideas that have been proclaimed in the 20th century. And so, the true Orthodox, wherever they're found, I wish they were struggling with us. I wish they were all together. I think that they've done a tremendous benefit to the preachers of heresy because they've removed themselves from the struggle. If I was a bishop that was a teacher of heresy, and the people who made my life difficult by reminding the faithful that I was not teaching orthodoxy removed themselves from my diocese, would I be upset or happy?
You'd be happy.
I'd be happy.
Yeah.
I'm done with them. I can go on about my business. So I don't, methodologically, that's not proven to be the way of the saints over the last 100 years. And again, I think that God is working to divide the sheep from the goats. I think we are going to see a restoration of orthodoxy. I'm optimistic. I think that the events are going to be unbelievable, what we're going to see in the next 3 to 4 years. And I believe, basing myself on the saints of our day, that we're going to see a restoration of orthodoxy. And when that comes, I pray to God that all of our brothers and sisters who are among the true and genuine groups come and join all of us in one body, in one faith again, and we're no longer divided. So, I'm not against any of them on a personal level. I think that they're orthodox in faith, and we should be together. But their methodology they've chosen is just not. I don't see that as the patristic methodology throughout history. I believe in the words of the saints, And they give me great encouragement that actually that's not going to be the end of their goals is not going to be what they think. There's going to be an intervention of history, according to St. Paisios, intervention of God in history. He talks about a time when people are going to beg you to talk to them about Christ. They're going to stop you on the street and say, tell me about Christ. St. Paisios says this 25 years ago. St. Porphyrios talks about a new crew in the church. What is that all about? Metropolitan Neophytos of Morpho talks about this a lot. There's going to be a new crew in the church. How's that going to happen? Well, it's not going to happen by voluntarily them resigning. So I don't know. I'm not a prophet, so I don't know. But I believe in the saints and their words. There will be a new crew in the church. Saint Elder Ephraim and others talk about a restoration of orthodoxy in a council. He's talked about this. He's prophesied this many years ago. We know that before the end of history, there will be a preaching of the gospel, an Orthodox preaching, according to St. John of Shanghai and San Francisco, an Orthodox preaching of the gospel to the peoples. I think that is yet to happen. And so there's got to be a time period when the church is going to be able to do that. With heretically minded hierarchs, that's not going to happen. And so there has to be a new crew in the church. There has to be a time when the church will be led by those who are expressing and living and preaching the Orthodox faith without selling it out or without watering it down. St. John of Shanghai said that one of the reasons why the Russian diaspora happened was that the gospel and the Orthodox faith be spread across the world. And I think that that's still going on, and we're not at the end of history. This idea that the mark of the beast is these various totalitarian means that we see being developed doesn't seem to add up, because we know the mark of the beast is going to be associated with the person of Christ. Of Antichrist. It's going to be associated with the subjection to the person of Antichrist, and it's going to be a matter of denying Christ. It's not going to be an impersonal manipulation through technology. Is what we're seeing a forerunner to that? Absolutely. The methodology is very much reminiscent. Elder Parthenius of St. Paul's tells us, I tell my spiritual children, don't take this vaccine, precisely because methodologically reminds us of the way the demons and the devil works and is as seen in the book of Revelation. So we are seeing, again, a tremendous assault on humanity, and yet it's not the end. So what does that lead me to believe? That there's going to be a turnaround. There's going to be a time when the church is going to be, again, able to express itself clearly to the world through its hierarchy and through its representatives. We're not in that. We haven't had that for decades. We've had compromise after compromise after compromise on the part of our representatives and our hierarchy. And so, that we're in the situation we are today is a direct result of those compromises. It's very much impressive. It very much impresses me that the same leaders who've been pushing ecumenism are pushing the COVID-ism and the vaccine as some kind of good sent by God. It's not an accident. I didn't have trust in them then. I'm not going to trust them now. There's no basis for me. Those who don't recognize the demonic methodology behind COVIDism are spiritually blind. You don't need to become a scientist. You don't need to become a doctor. You don't need to become an historian to figure out that this is a demonic methodology that's at work when there's fear, intimidation, pressure, manipulation, coercion. Who's behind that? The devil, the demons. So even as I say that, again, I'm very optimistic, because when he exposes himself, the enemy exposes himself, then we're going to start working. There's going to be spiritual progress. It's the cloudiness that has been so debilitating for the church. That doesn't help the mission of the church. So yes, there's Kestrel papism, and yes, we need to respond to the saints. And that's why I did the whole course on the new martyrs, because I wanted to show the faithful what the saints did in the 1920s when they were faced with a kind of renovationism we have today and the kind of surgism that we have today. What did the saints do? How did they react? And we've got to struggle to follow their example.
At some point you earlier in your response, you were talking about the way that things are working in Greece,
It's
in the
just
Church
not
of Greece.
that kind of legalistic, rejection across the board, undiscerning, indiscriminate rejection of everyone, even if they're struggling against ecumenism. For instance, I've talked about ecumenism for 20, 30 years. It's been one of the things I've studied. And even though I'm vocal against the ecclesiological heresy of ecumenism, I'm still considered to be a non-priest, a non-Orthodox. There's no sense of any discernment between and no participation in the struggle. One of the biggest criticisms I have of these brothers and sisters who followed the old calendar among the old calendar jurisdictions is you've made yourself irrelevant. You will not be persecuted for your faith by these heretically minded because you're irrelevant. Patriarch Bartholomew could care less what they're saying because they have essentially departed from his communion and from his sphere of influence. And so whatever they say, he just writes off. And there's no sense of being co-responsible. As we say, as all Orthodox, we bear one of those burdens. We're co-responsible, all of us, for the state of the church. And so when I depart from communion, declare graceless, declare heretical, all without discrimination, I'm no longer bearing their burden. I'm no longer struggling along with them. And I become irrelevant to the struggle. I don't think the saints ever were irrelevant to the struggle.